This is just a thank you episode to everyone that has made this podcast what it is. Situaseans Podcast cannot live on without your support. Hello, and welcome to Situaseans Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Michael Williams, aka seanydoo. You can call me Sean, Shawnee, seanydoo. Does not matter to me. I'm just glad that y'all are here. And you might be wondering, what's with this episode that just came out of nowhere? Like, this episode isn't part of like the general rotation. Like, aren't you supposed to have an episode like, I guess in another, into next week? Yeah. So the thing about it is we do have the episode coming out on Wednesday, January 3rd. So that's still scheduled and everything like that. So no worries about that episode. That episode is actually featuring Maris from season 5 of Love is Blind. So I can't wait for you guys to tune into that. But that one's going to be such a fun episode as well. So definitely tune in. But I'm interrupting, the regular schedule because I want to put out this bonus episode because this episode is kind of like a very special message to all of the listeners like who listen in. And, this is just a thank you episode to everyone that has made this podcast, what it is, even though, this podcast is pretty much just me doing all of it, but as far as like the production and on the back end, but as you listeners and people that come onto the show as the guests, you all make this podcast what it is. Situaseans Podcast cannot live on without your support and your dedication to sharing the podcast, whether it's on social media or if you're sharing it with your friends, your families, your coworkers, anybody that is going through something. So I just want to say thank you so much for tuning in and sharing this podcast because you all are what makes this podcast what it is today. Yeah. And so I just wanted to use this app as an opportunity to just, thank all you listeners, like what I'm doing now. And then, I just want to say, I'm just grateful for all the guests that have come on. They have been able to share their stories and be vulnerable with us. And I really appreciate that. And I know you listeners and you viewers that are listening and or watching, you appreciate that as well. So yeah, I just can't wait to see what 2024 will bring for everybody. I can't wait to see what it'll bring for myself and my personal life. And I can't wait to see what 2024 will bring for this podcast. I know there's going to be so many great things. And, first and foremost, I'll be at a PodFest convention down in Orlando, Florida at the end of January. So that's going to be so exciting. So I can't wait to do that. And so I'm just doing a lot of things with this podcast into 2024 that's just going to really start to grow. And I'm also trying to, get some sponsors on board. I got a couple of negotiations going on right now. So a little bit of paperwork on the back end trying to figure out and negotiate how we can, kind of make this partnership or collaboration work. So yeah, that's another thing that I'm looking forward to as well. So sponsorships and brands in 2024. Can't wait for all of that to happen as well. So, starting off some of the things that's new with this podcast as well, that's going to be kind of going into next year is, one of the new things I'm excited for is the new cover art for this podcast that you'll see on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. So if you're watching on YouTube, youtube.com/@situationspod, you'll see a picture of the new graphics. So you all are getting like the first look of what the new Situaseans Podcast, graphics is going to look like moving forward. And kind of to just kind of segue and kind of caveat with that. So some of y'all may notice that like lately, these last few episodes, my hair has been looking all kind of rough and everything. I know y'all, my hair looks rough. I know I look like somebody's lost child, but there is rhyme and reason behind that. So what I'm doing is, your boy always wanted to, twist in like dreads or whatever and all that stuff. Had like dreadlocks or whatever before I get old and go bald or whatever. So I was just like, you know what? let me get some dreads that I can twist in, because I'm not patient enough to wait for my hair to like grow, like long enough in order to like get natural dreads. So I'm gonna get like twist in dreads and stuff like that. So really, some of y'all may be saying like, why are you talking about this? This has nothing to do with the podcast. Just saying that this is a new year, a new me, a new look. So yeah, I'm gonna get that going, especially since the hair on top of my head is starting to thin the fuck out. So it's, I need to get this done now and enjoy it while I still have hair like natural hair to feel and count on. So, I do apologize for looking so rough. Like I said, this is the real raw, uncut version of Sean, Shawnee, or whatever you want to call me. But yeah, this is like the real unfiltered version of myself. But yeah, we keep things natural here. But yeah, so that's kind of a little bit behind the reason as to why, yeah, I'm looking a little rough. Yeah, so I want to talk about some of the ups of 2023. There's been so many great things that happened this year, new friendships, like new, situations and stuff like that. And like new people that I've gotten to connect with, whether it be like via dating or via, like going out or via just, just being out in the environment and traveling and stuff like that. Yeah, I've been able to kind of really meet people from all different walks of life this year. And I think that's really, really, really good. And so, so I definitely want to kind of cover some of the ups of 2023. So kind of just starting off with, first and foremost, the biggest, I guess, pro of 2023 has been this podcast. I started this podcast because I was going through so many different trials and tribulations with dating and stuff like that, and trying to like figure it out because, as the years go on, the dating apps become more saturated, more just kind of, it's hard to find genuine connections because more and more people are on the dating apps. And so this year has been very interesting, trying to date and stuff like that. But I started this podcast because I wanted to talk about my trials and tribulations with dating, as well as, some of the frustrations that I've had on the apps, and then just trying to share the stuff that I went through in my past relationships and just be vulnerable with you all and share with you all, because we're all going through stuff. And I started the podcast because I was like, wait a minute, I can't be the only person that's this frustrated with the dating environment. Like, am I? Like, is it just me that feels this way? So by having you all submit your stories and your questions and everything, that made this podcast grow significantly. And in the short amount of time that this podcast has been going, because the podcast started in March. So, in a few more months, this will be like it'll be like the podcast will have been live for an entire year. But like I said, as we're moving into year 2 of the podcast, because this entire year was year 1, so 2024 will be year 2 of doing this, whatever. But so. Like this podcast, I wanted to create a safe space for all of you that are going through things. And I'm just glad that I was able to do this and share, and you all being able to share and be vulnerable. So that meant the entire world. So thank you for that. I really do appreciate it. And so, I found my purpose by sharing my stories and, having the opportunity to do this on such a public platform, because I know it's not easy to do this. Like, to be able to share, just be vulnerable and just talk about these sensitive subjects with the world, like, whoever's going to like see this or hear this. And it's encouraged others to want to do the same, like as well, as far as like my personal, the people that I know, like in my life. Cause, some people have told me, hey, I submitted a story on your podcast. I was like, oh, wait, really? Like, oh, thank you for sharing, even though I have like the listeners that don't know me personally that submit their stories, I've heard from a couple of friends that was like, hey, I was going through something and I submitted a story. I was like, oh, well, I appreciate that. It's just like, at the end of the day, like, I really appreciate that I have been able to build this open community, this open environment to be able to share like this. And it took some practice, because no one just starts off the bat being like a great podcaster. You have to kind of go through it, do a couple episodes, and before you're like, okay, I got the hang of this. Because hell, I know the first episode, I I don't even want to listen to that episode anymore, because if you go back and listen to episode 1, it's just me saying a bunch of like, yeah, I'm like, oh my God. So I just appreciate you all bearing with me through that first episode and bearing with me as this podcast continues to grow. And, not many podcasts make it past 10 episodes. So the fact that I am about to reach 20 episodes, technically this would be like episode 20 if you want to count it, but I'm not going to count it because this is a bonus episode. Episode 20 will be, the episode that comes out on Wednesday, January 3rd. So stay tuned for that, like I mentioned. But, so not many podcasts make it past 10 episodes. The fact that I'm just continuing to do this all on my own. Again, I have no marketing team. I have no agent or no publicist or no booking agent or any, to book guests or whatever, no media promotion. Like, this is just all me just doing this by myself. I'm doing the editing, I'm doing the graphic design, I'm doing, like putting together the outlines or whatever that I want to talk about. And, the topics and everything like that, booking the guests, that's all me. So, it does give me a lot of, I guess, power to kind of make this podcast as best as I can for you all, because now that it's coming directly from me. I'm putting all the work into it or whatever. So you all have an idea like, this is me giving you the best version of this podcast that I possibly can. And it's just cool to just know that, I'm able to still do this, even having a day job, because I do work a 9 to 5, and then I also act and also do music. So it's like I do all these avenues and trying to do this podcast. But, this podcast is going to continue to grow. And as this podcast grows, I'm going to definitely have people on that I can, that'll also be able to, I also have like people that, I guess, production, like people that would be able to come on and help with the show once the show gets a little bit bigger. But, more on that whenever we get to that point and cross that bridge. At the end of the day, like, doing this podcast is no easy work. It's complicated sometimes, but hey, I really do enjoy putting this out for you all. And, it takes a lot of hours to produce this podcast. And that's why this podcast is a bi-weekly podcast. So, one day I do hope to make this a weekly podcast. And, I'll definitely get into that later near the end of the episode, because there are some updates that I want to share with that as well. So, I made so many friends this year, like I was saying earlier, and even just having the friends that I knew already coming onto the show, that was just so cool to like learn new things from my friends that I had on as guests that I wouldn't have known. I was like, oh wow, like you did this, or you like are a part of this, or you experienced this. I never knew this about you. I learned new things about the friends that I've had on this show. And then the guests that I had on this show that I did not know at all, that I booked for this show, I learned new things about them. And, I was able to kind of take their experiences and, and just really sit with that. Like, wow, like that person went through that, or oh, like this is what drives that person. Just experiencing and hearing other people's stories. I love that. And that's why I started this podcast, because I wanted to hear other people's stories. And I wanted you all as the listeners to submit your stories and hear other people's stories, and other people can read your stories and stuff like that, like how we unpack it on the show. So I really appreciated that so much. Whenever you all submit your stories, or whenever guests share their stories, it's a drop of love on my heart. And I know I haven't said it in the past couple episodes, but I'm going to say it here on this episode. Drip, drip, drip. Submit, submit, submit. I love that. Situationspodcast.com/submit. Submit all your stuff there. So, just learning a new dynamic from people that come onto this show, whether it's a friend that I know or someone that I didn't know, but now I know them after, I know a little bit about them after having them on as a guest. And now it's like, yeah, I feel like I can be friends with a lot of the guests that come onto the show that I didn't know at first. It's like, oh, I built a connection, and like with some of the guests, like it's like just being able to just hear their story and just know what makes them. Like, that is just cool. And so I do want to thank all of my guests, whether they're the guests that were my friends that I knew or the guests that I didn't know but now know. I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your story and being vulnerable and open and transparent on this podcast and trusting me and trusting the audience with the things that you wanted to unpack, because that's not easy. And I don't take that for granted, and I appreciate your vulnerability. So thank you so much to the guests, and thank you to the future guests that I have coming onto the show, because there are some episodes that I've already shot way in advance because, you know, there's just so many busy things going on and stuff like that. So yeah, like, you know, I got episodes that span into like, you know, pretty much like late March. And that's just because, again, you know, like, I'm finding so many guests that want to be a part of the show. And on top of that, I've been, you know, some people have been reaching out to be on the show. So it's like, okay, cool. Like, all right. So, yeah, I can't wait for you all to hear all of that. And just hearing like the positive feedback via some people that have called or DMs or texts, social media posts. I just want to say thank you all for doing that as well. Like, I appreciate it. You know, being able to just share and know that this podcast is helping the people out there. I appreciate that. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, can you do me a really quick favor? Can you please rate and review this podcast? Like, hit that 5-star review, because, and I do read all the reviews because this helps me know how this podcast is helping others and how, you know, this podcast is serving you, because it's my job as a host is to serve you this podcast the way that you would prefer it to be. So, you know, because it's like, yeah, you know, although this podcast is like my quote unquote public diary, but at the same time, you know, it's you listeners that help shape this show. So I appreciate you leaving those 5-star reviews. Like, continue to do so. And if you have a suggestion for this show to make this show even better, I'm open to suggestions. I love that shit. DM the podcast on Instagram or email us situationspod@gmail.com. And maybe if you know somebody that wants to sponsor the show, or you have a business, or there's something you want to advertise, yeah, submit it to this email right here. And, you know, we can connect and we can see how we can get your brand, you know, advertised on the show. I would love to do that. I'm all about helping people out, because I know what it's like to not really, you know whether or not if someone's looking out for me or whatever. So it's like, if I can look out for somebody in any way, shape, or form that I can, I'm going to do it. So yeah, definitely connect. Let's get in touch. And then, you know, I've upgraded my production equipment on this show. So, you know, I got new cameras and stuff like that. Like these, like this camera and this camera. Like, you know, I got these cameras this year. And there's a third camera that I got that I brought on, but that I was going to be using, but that one ended up getting stolen by the neighbors downstairs. They were trespassing, got kicked out. So they were tenants at first, got kicked out, then they trespassed or whatever. And as they were trespassing, they were still in packages and stuff like that. They recently got arrested for trying to break in, because one of the neighbors across the street called 911. So, you know, and I found out from the police that my camera that they stole, that they pawned it. So, you know, it's a whole story. Maybe I'll unpack it in another episode, but yeah, kind of getting back to it. I bought a bunch of equipment for this show to make this show visually appealing to those that are watching and visually appealing to those that are listening, you know, because if you have shitty audio, like that, a podcast is about audio, right? So if you got shitty audio, what are you really doing? You know what I mean? Like, so I wanted to make sure that the video and the audio, but audio first, because this is a podcast. I wanted to make sure that the audio sounded as best as possible and the video to look as good as possible. So yeah, upgraded production equipment. And, you know, I'm going to continue to, you know, make adjustments and changes and stuff like that, you know, like the visuals here on the wall and everything, like to make this look really rich and clean. You know, I like that stuff, because it's like, if I'm viewing someone else's podcast, or I'm viewing or listening into like another show, yeah, I want the production value to be a little bit there, but we all work with our budget with what we can. But I just know for myself, I was like, well, I want my podcast to look and sound as clean and crisp as possible. So how can I do that to cater this to my listeners? And so I just appreciate you all being along with me for this journey. And I got, Patreon subscribers on this podcast as well. So to the few that, that are Patreon subscribers, I appreciate you all because you all are helping make this podcast grow because, it does take money to produce things like this, and your support helps creators like myself create quality content. So if and so in return, I give my Patreon supporters like behind the scene content, ad-free episodes, and now we're going to be doing bonus episodes, and I'll get to that in a moment as well. Cause now I have the means to do the bonus episode. So I'll be talking about that as well. So many things going on. I cannot wait for you all to really see what 2024 is going to bring for this podcast. So yeah, definitely stay tuned. A couple other things too, as far as like the ups of 2023 is I got to play 2 of my dream roles this year. So y'all know that I love doing theater, and the fact that I got to play Collins in Rent. Oh my goodness. Like that was such a phenomenal character. And I'm just glad I got to finally play it. Those of you that don't know the musical Rent, it's about like these young people, like they're, early mid 20s, trying to, live and like in the city of New York when they, and they get evicted from their apartment because they can't afford to pay the rent. So they're trying to figure out how they're going to pay rent. And it's kind of like a bohemian kind of like, aesthetic and feel to it. But yeah, so being able to play Collins was like phenomenal. Absolutely loved it. The original Collins was Jesse L. Martin. If y'all watch the TV show The Flash, the guy who plays Detective Joe West, or for some of you, or like the Law and Order fans, he's like one of like the main stars in the OG Law and Order. So I'm just glad that I got to play Collins, and then also I got to play Lumiere in Beauty and the Beast. That was fucking phenomenal. Got into like getting to play such a dynamic, funny character, lighthearted character. And in a way, I was like, this is kind of like a version of myself a little bit because I am like a flirtatious kind of like, carefree kind of funny guy. So it was cool to be able to play that and live out that dream role. So yeah, that was so much fun. And in both productions, I made so many new friends, so many new connections, and I cannot wait to be back on stage next year in whatever shape or form capacity with the friends and connections that I made in this year and years prior. So I just can't wait for 2024 getting back on stage. That's going to be lit. And also, I'm excited because in 2024, I'm going to be an uncle. Your boy seanydoo is going to be an uncle for the first time. So sibling number 3 of 5, the middle child, she's having a baby. I don't know if it's public knowledge of as far as like, if it's a boy or girl, but I'm not, I won't share that. I'll leave that to, my sister, but I'm excited to be an uncle. So I cannot wait to hold the little one and be like, yeah, I'm going to protect you. Like I'm going to be the best uncle in the world. So Uncle seanydoo, let's fucking go. And then, I've had the pleasure of being able to spend my time with people that I've connected with on the dating apps this year and stuff like that. And, I'm going to keep it very broad in general to not give timelines or whatever, give out information, but just spending my time with the people, with the person or people that I'm spending my time with. Like, I really appreciate that because, yeah, it's just like the connections that I made and coming across these like this person or individuals, it's just been just like very cool. And so, it's I'm enjoying spending my time, when I spend my time, and then the feelings and sentiments have been mutual from the other party or parties. So yeah, it's just it's been a good year. Like so don't get me wrong. if anybody's wondering, yes, I am still single. Yes, I am still single. But I'm just connecting and just enjoying my time with the person or individuals that I am spending my time with. Some of the downs of 2023, dating has definitely been complicated with my busy schedule. So let's just call it what it is. A few people that I was seeing at one point this year was just, terrible communicators. And so they had a lot of baggage that they were kind of projecting onto me. So at the end of the day, that was just so fucking frustrating. But, they did not know that they were projecting or, just did not know how to process certain things that happened to them in their individual past. So, that one was a little bit tough to navigate, but hey, it is what it is. I'm just trying to just live my best life. And so it's unfortunate that it has come to this, but that I had to kind of, separate myself from like those individuals. And, I'm going to, continue to like be the best version of myself and do me. And yeah, that's all I can really do. Like at the time of this recording, I did, kind of like turn off the dating apps just so I can just focus on getting into the new year, because there's so many things that I'm going to be doing in 2024. And so I'm just trying to, just trying to just be the best version of myself that I can. And I want to start the year off strong. I need to focus on these avenues, these creative avenues that I'm trying to, get going. So, and then there was some drama with people that I once considered very close friends, and kind of had to put into that relationship with said former friends because the drama that was just kind of coming up and just like the history with that drama was just starting to, really take a toll on my own mental and emotional well-being as well as others around. And that same drama started to trickle into, the group of friends that I'm really close with. And thank goodness, the group of friends that this drama started to also get over into, thankfully, those group of friends, they pretty much kind of felt the exact same way that I felt as far as like how that drama was affecting, us. And I was just like, and they decided to kind of distance themselves or put it in or limit their time around the individuals that started the whole drama. So I'm, so moving into 2024, I'm trying to be drama free 2024. So if you cannot respect me, then fuck off. If anybody asks what era are you in, Sean? Honestly, my era is mutual respect or fuck off. And I do mean that. So, yeah. So just to those individuals that was starting like the drama, stuff like that. Again, I'm not going to get into details to not out anybody, but you know who the fuck you are. And like, hey, I do wish you the best, but hey, at the end of the day, it's like you need to do the work on yourself and possibly see a therapist, like legitimately. So that's all I'm gonna say on it. That's all I'm gonna speak on it. It is what it is. So again, I'm going into 2024 drama-free, stress-free. So if you cannot respect me the same way that I'm giving you respect, then you are not worth my time. So time is valuable, and we gotta respect each other. One of the other things is I was sad that I had to sell my 2011 Corvette. Casper, my C5 Corvette. If you're watching on YouTube, I'll drop a little picture here. But yeah, she was such a fucking beautiful Corvette. I had to sell her because, I had to start saving money because I'm moving in August of 2024 to Los Angeles because I want to pursue acting a little bit, a bit more seriously. And so, just having a monthly car payment and all that stuff, I'm just like, because I had just bought it like last year. And so I was like, okay, I got to start compiling and compressing where I can as far as finances so that I can have money in my pocket for the move. So yeah, I'm going to miss that car. I'm going to miss you, Casper, wherever you are out there. Just know that, I love you and you were such a great car and I appreciate the fun times that we had. And then, one of the last things about 2023 that was a little bit crazy or hectic is, I very recently received some shocking news that kind of affects certain individuals in my personal life. It doesn't affect me, but it does affect some people around me, and and now I got to figure out the best way how I can be there for these individuals in my life because of this shocking news that was heard. But the news doesn't affect me, and I'm trying to like be as like general as possible without giving out information about this, but because it's not public knowledge, but it does tie into some of the stuff and some of the trauma that I've been talking about earlier in this podcast. So those of you that know me real well can kind of guess, but I'm waiting for this to be public knowledge before I can further share, because it's not my news to share. But so that is something that kind of did surprise some folks. That's the best way that I can pretty much put that. But yeah, so I'll definitely be able to share that with you when that becomes public knowledge, because there is some stuff that I want to talk about that when that time comes. And that'll be something that I'll definitely have to dedicate an episode to. But moving on. So some of the what's new for 2024. So so you all know that this podcast is a video podcast just as much as it is an audio podcast. So now in 2024, and even with this episode, starting with this episode and a few episodes in an episode prior, the episode you can now watch this video, like the podcast as a video on Spotify if you so choose. So you don't have to do anything different. All you have to do is just, if you're going to Situaseans Podcast, if you're listening on Spotify, you just click on the episode that you want to listen to. It'll play the episode just as normal as it would anything else, but it'll play the video version of this podcast. So if you're, like on a train, or if you're doing your morning routine before you go to work, or cooking, or whatever it is you're doing throughout the day, you can watch this podcast on Spotify. So that's really cool. And I kind of had to do some things on the back end as far as like the podcast servers, as far as like the podcast, like the domain that hosts this podcast. Had to do some things to kind of like finagle to make this possible. But yeah, so if you prefer to watch on Spotify, then now you can do that. And for those that are watching on YouTube, don't worry, this podcast isn't going anywhere. You can still watch this podcast on YouTube. So it's not going anywhere. I'm just adding a video component for the Spotify audience. Now, for the people that listen via Apple Podcasts, I am trying to get the video version on Apple Podcasts, but to make a very long story short, and to not, go into like technical details for those of you that are not techies, but Apple Podcasts kind of gatekeeps who can have a video podcast, if that makes sense. So unfortunately, this podcast isn't a big enough podcast for Apple Podcasts to, release their secrets to like allow this podcast to have a video component embedded within it. So I'm trying to make that happen, but it's a little bit difficult. So for those that listen on Apple Podcasts and you still want to get the video version of this podcast, you can still watch on YouTube, youtube.com/@situationspod. But also you can, what I'm going to do is now, you can still like watch that, but now I'm doing bonus episodes, right? So, and I'll tell you more about that. But for the Apple podcasters, you can still access this podcast by just going to YouTube, .com/@situationspod. And yeah, you can watch it there. And then for the Spotify audience, you can, just continue to play the audio version of this podcast on Spotify. And then if you want to watch the video version, just click on it, or like just play this podcast how you would normally play any of our other episodes. The video will just pop up right there. And kind of segueing, so now I'll be doing bonus episodes called Pillow Talks. And so I'll be sharing more intimate, stuff about that, like that I can't really necessarily share, like like I guess on the regular episodes, because it's like, I want to be more intimate with you all and be really nitty gritty with like with some of the stuff that I go through. But I'm going to share that with the people, with the people that I feel like, that would benefit the most from it. And so, the idea of pillow talks, whatever, and actually I'm gonna drop a little graphic right here. This is what the bonus episodes will be like will be. So it's not going anywhere. It'll still be under Situaseans Podcast. You ain't got to go to you don't have to search for a different podcast. It's all going to be part of this general podcast, whatever. But just the bonus episodes, again, that's just for the people that I feel that will benefit the most from it. And if you feel like you'll benefit the most from it, then yeah, you can subscribe to it. So the bonus episodes, like the Pillow Talk episodes, just to kind of give a little quick segue. A very special friend of mine came up with the idea of the Pillow Talk episodes. Who, like, as far as like the name of the Pillow Talk, whatever, because I've been telling this person for the longest. I was like, I want to do these bonus episodes, whatever, but I don't know, like how I should call it, like what I should call it, but I want to just do these bonus episodes for the listeners. And, a good friend of mine had kind of like, put the little bug in my ear about, as far as like the name for the bonus episodes. And so you know who you are. You know exactly who you are. And I just want to say thank you so much because, like that, I appreciate it. Notice how I'm just doing like the air traffic control or whatever. But yeah, it's a funny, like a hilarious inside joke between the person that helped me out with the name of the bonus episode. So thank you. Again, I always give credit where credit is due. So yes, getting back to it, the Pillow Talk bonus episodes. Those are the episodes that'll be like a subscription. So you can do like a monthly subscription, and I'm gonna try to see if I can finagle it so you can do like a yearly subscription. So you gotta pay once. So I'm gonna be looking into that. But anyway, it's the monthly subscription will be less than the price of a cup of coffee. So probably like somewhere between like $3 to $5. I'm gonna try to keep it within that bracket. Again, some of you might be asking, well, why am I paying for like the bonus episodes? Again, this is like, additional content that will definitely benefit those that want to be a part, like, that want to subscribe to the bonus content, because it's more intimate conversations, more intimate, connections and things like that, that can't necessarily be shared with, like, I guess just everybody. And it's like, yeah, if you want to get some of the really nitty gritty stuff, then like, yeah, consider subscribing to get the bonus episodes. So you can subscribe. You'll be able to subscribe to the bonus episode, to the Pillow Talk bonus episodes on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And so the video version of the bonus episodes will be on Spotify. You'll just be able to play it or whatever, like a normal episode once you subscribe to the, to the bonus episodes. But the video version of the bonus episodes, again, with Apple Podcasts and how they're gatekeeping who can do video episodes and who can't. So for my Apple Podcast listeners, the video portion of the bonus of the Pillow Talk bonus episodes, that will be available on Patreon. So patreon.com/Situaseans Podcast. And if you click the $5 tier, it's called the Squad Goals tier. So if you click on that, you'll be able to access the bonus episodes, the Pillow Talk episodes, if you want to watch the video version of it, if you prefer to watch the video and you don't have Spotify or whatever. So you don't want to do it via Spotify. So yeah, I hope all of that makes sense. I cannot wait for you all to like kind of tune into that. As you all may know, especially those that tune into episode 17, you know that Harley the Husky, she is, I'll put a little picture here if you're watching on YouTube, but because she doesn't want to jump on the couch. But anyway, so Harley the Husky is an integral part to this show, and she's the show's mascot and the production assistant. So in the past couple episodes that I've had with guests, Harley, she'll kind of like prop herself up on the couch on the side here. And sometimes it's hard to see because like, again, like the setup of this, like, like this, what do you call it? This podcast studio setup or whatever. It's a little bit small. So it's kind of hard to like adjust the camera so that Harley can be seen here in this corner. But so what I'm going to do is, and this idea, kind of like, came up in in discussion in one of the episodes that I got coming out. We're going to have a Harley cam, starting now. So I got a bunch of episodes kind of already taped. So it won't happen until episode 25 or 25, I believe. So yeah. So yeah, that'll definitely be in March by the time you all get to see episodes that implement a Harley cam, meaning like I'm going to have a camera propped over here to the side so it'll be able to, see Harley. And so that way, whenever Harley decides to join on the couch with me and my guest, we'll be able to cut to the Harley cam and kind of, show Harley, and kind of highlight her because she's a cutie and the world deserves to see and know Harley. So yeah. So going back to what I was saying earlier this year about setting goals for this podcast, one of the goals that I really want to set is 10,000 monthly listeners. So we have a small army of listeners right now with Situaseans Podcast. It's like, it's only like in a few thousands or whatever. It's like, and so, I want to get to 10,000 monthly listeners. So the goal is if we get 10,000 monthly listeners, Situaseans Podcast will become a weekly podcast. Yes, you heard that right. I'm going to stand by my word. If Situaseans Podcast when we get to 10,000 monthly listeners, this will become a weekly podcast and there'll be more bonus content episodes, like, everything. Like, again, so I cannot wait for you all to see that and experience like 10,000 monthly listeners with me, because it's an experience for us all. We're going to all experience it all together. So, yeah. And I'm going to just manifest this as well. If we, so after we get to 10,000 monthly listeners, I'm going to consider doing like a live show somewhere. And, I'm definitely going to do it in Chicago because Chicago's home base. So it doesn't matter where I move to or whatever. I'm going to definitely hold the live show in Chicago since Chicago is where it all started. So I don't know when we'll get to that point, but I am manifesting it now. And so that, those of you that are just listening or when I decide to go back in the archives and kind of just reminisce on content, I'll be like, oh yeah, that was the episode that I manifested it. So we're going to do a live show, like a live, show of this podcast on a stage somewhere, like whether it be like a small theater or whatever, or, some stage environment, like it's going to be like a live show of this podcast. And I'm going to be bringing back the OG guests, some of the OG guests that were on this show. So I can't wait for that. And then we're going to, so it's going to be a whole fun event. Like, it's going to be an opening act, whether it's comedian or a performance or something like that, or whatever. Like I might even do like a drag show, cause that'd be cool too. So, it's going to be an opening performance, and then it's going to be like the general, the general live show of this podcast, which is going to be so lit. Dating app makeovers, what else? Hinge or unhinged prompts, we're going to be bringing people on stage. It's going to be fun and lit, like whenever we get to that point. But again, I'm manifesting it now so that you all kind of have an idea of where I want to take this podcast. But yeah, so that'll be fun. And then the closing part of the podcast will be, a performance by yours truly, one song from, your boy, seanydoo, because some of you that don't know, I make music, and yeah, I would just close out the live show with one of my, songs and everything like that. And then, it'd be a really good time. So whenever I get to that point, I cannot wait, but that is something that I am looking forward to in the future of Situaseans Podcast. I don't know if it'll happen for 2024. It would be nice if we can get to that point, but for right now, I'm just, manifesting it now so that when that time comes, like, hey, I'll be like, hey, we as an audience, like everyone who listens to the podcast or everyone that's been on this podcast, we are all a community now. So it's like we are a team. So when that happens, we will all feel good knowing that we manifested it here first. So I appreciate you all. So, again, be sure to subscribe to the Patreon for this show, patreon.com/Situaseans Podcast, because that is going to continue to help make this podcast even bigger, make this podcast what it is that, that you would like this podcast to be, because, we're all in this together. So definitely subscribe to the Patreon. And then, we also have merch. So go to situationspodcast.com, click on the merch tab, and get your merch, get your t-shirts and all of that stuff, I cannot wait for y'all to to get the merch, whatever. I'm gonna buy a couple of shirts, whatever, and wear it on this podcast to rep it. I cannot wait. And don't forget to continue submitting your stories. Situationspodcast.com/submit. Fuck yes, do it. And if you have an ick, situationspodcast.com/ick. And again, so I thank you all for submitting your stories and everything. If you want to call the hotline, 312-586-2664, or you can email the podcast, situationspod@gmail.com, right? Let's get it. So if you're at home, a plane, a train, a car, a boat, a bus, if you're in the 10th dimension, if you're my one-time cousin twice removed, you can listen and tune into Situations Podcast wherever you go. Take this podcast with you wherever. We are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, okay? I appreciate you all in this journey with me. I cannot wait, for you all to listen to, episode 20 featuring Maris from season 5 of Love is Blind. So definitely tune into that. I cannot wait for you all to see that. That's coming out on Wednesday, January 3rd. So yeah, I will see you all in the year 2024